Hello and welcome to Rise and Shine with Alissa. I am your hostess, the consultress, here bringing you innovative and amazing conversations with entrepreneurs, parents, and investors because we live in the age of disruption where nothing is going back to normal. And what's normal anyway? It's pretty boring, right? On the cutting edge of emerging challenges and problems, I get the opportunity in my day-to-day life to have conversations with very interesting people who are creating new solutions to emergent problems and mixing it up out there, being more of who they are. So I am so delighted to invite Rusty Ward to the podcast this morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Alyssa?
Doing great, thank you. Can I see your mug once more because you lifted it up
Certainly.
for me before, and I'm like, oh, cat dad, cool. Did the cat buy you that?
My daughters bought me that because I was a reluctant cat owner. I grew up with dogs. My family wanted cats, and I agreed to one cat, and they came home with two.
Oh man.
Yeah.
It's like my
So,
story with animals. We started very small with a bunny, and then a lizard, and then fish, and then quail, and finches. I mean, now we have dogs. A friend of mine,
you have finches?
we did until we figured out my
Whoa.
husband was allergic. Um, but like we had a menagerie. My friend who used to watch our animals was like, "Could you get like a regular animal one of these days?" But hey, you do what's in front of you and what's new and exciting. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to get to know you because Carson actually sent you my way, and we're connected through the real estate and investing space. But he's like, I think you should be connected with my friend Rusty because he's up to some really cool things as a parent and as a leading edge innovator. So I got to learn a little bit about what you're up to. So how did you find this passion in life that you now call like your life's work?
So I was doing at the time I was in video production for 15 years. I was a director, and I was getting a little exhausted with my particular job at that time. And when the pandemic hit, I was at I was well, everybody was kind of homeschooling their kids.
Right.
We were going on to Zoom, and they were taking classes, and the kids were so super um, distracted, so easily distracted. And it was new. I think teachers have really come into, figuring out the virtual platform. But at the time when that first started, it just looked like torture.
Oh,
It looked terrible. And so what I started to do at that time was I started creating games that taught simple whatever things. You're in starships. There's two missiles coming here. There's three missiles coming here. How many missiles are coming at your starship? And it was basically just fun little games so we could do the instructions they were doing, the projects, the exercises they were doing at school, and we could do them at home and make them fun. At the same time, I was playing D&D with my family, and remotely pulling in another family. And so what I started doing was with the educational lessons, I took those games and I strung them together into a story, and created a format where a kid takes on a character, goes through an adventure, and runs into different obstacles along the way. Those obstacles take the form of education. In the creative writing class, it's a writing exercise. In the STEM classes, they're math puzzles. But there's kids have more agency in their own education. Basically, it's a alternative to the lecture format. It's where the kids can basically play a character and move through their own education while I hide the education in fun games and fighting monsters and stuff like that.
I love that.
And
So
that
what I
be
want to
Yeah,
just
go ahead.
so what I want to just pull out here is like
Yeah.
in a period of disruption, like profound
Yes.
disruption. Yeah. You found a way to make the thing that was eyeball drying and head poundingly boring or difficult or frustrating, and you found a way to make it fun, which is like
Yeah.
the parents' best like wish for education is that education actually is enjoyable, and you took what you knew, what you learned through immersive gameplay and brought
Mhm.
that into the space of education and kind of married the two. So I'm like, I'm listening through the filter of my son and I'm going, where were you 5 years ago for me? Because we were homeschooling, and when the pandemic hit, it was less of a disruption to us because our approach to homeschooling was unschooling. We basically went out, had adventures, and met people, had conversations, and followed the curiosity. So I'm with you, man. And like, let's make learning fun, let's make learning immersive, because a lot of times the industrial style of learning that today's kids, even now, like after said disruption, they're still looking to innovate. But at the end of the day, sit down, shut up, and behave only teaches us to indoctrinate our minds into that. There is an answer that's prescripted. What is it? If I don't know it, then I'm less than. But what it sounds like you've done is created a way for people, for kids and adults, to get in there with the learning and really play with it. And I am a big advocate for where there's curiosity and like the desire to obsess, perhaps, whether that's in a game structure, in a role play structure, or like just simply taking things apart. That's where real learning happens, don't you find?
Yeah, yeah. I think taking your kids out into the real world was a great alternative and a great choice. Period. Um, I know that I know a family that was in Norway at the time of the pandemic, and they just took their all the kids out in the snow, and they built a fire. They had the kids, building fires. So basically, that was the education, and at that time, my kids and these kids as well were in kindergarten through. I had one kid in kindergarten, one kid in second grade. I mean, just that kind of. I mean, you're soaking up a lot and learning a lot, even in simple activities. Whatever you're doing that takes you outside the boundaries of your normal routine. I mean, the pandemic was an extreme exercise in taking us all too far outside our normal routines and building up our stress in the process. But yeah, no, I am all for. I think it takes a lot more energy for kids to keep still than it does for kids to get up and move around. So if there's some way to get those kids active while they're learning, and if they're making a choice about where to go and what to learn to a certain degree, then they feel empowered by it and they get more interested in it.
Yeah, and I think that's really key, having them be empowered by it and being interested in it, feel like they're part of the equation that creates the end result, whether that be winning the game, learning the concept, what have you. But that is pretty much one of the primary drivers of our decision to homeschool at the beginning, was that, look, we can teach them information and make them repeat it to us, but is that real learning? And the reason why that came to me is because I got certified as a human potential trainer in the
Mhm.
early 2010s. And I realized I was outsourcing my humans. I was like, damn it, I can't unsee that. But I was watching their natural style of learning and their curiosity. Like, learning wasn't a thing you had to like train yourself to do. It is just part of what living and being curious and engaged is. That's where learning comes from anyway. So, reverse engineering it back to kind of the way it was always meant to be, by immersion and curiosity. I mean, fantastic. Now, you built a product on this initiative that you were using at home, and you built it for your family and the families that you had access to. So, where was the leap off point from I'm doing this for my family to this is now a vocation for me?
Yeah, I spent I still worked as a director for 2 years, and I ran a class towards the while I was working, on the over the weekend. The class went really well, and I decided to make a go for it. And basically started a private class, and then later worked my way into schools, which for me worked a lot better. It was a lot easier to connect and reach out to schools, and in my case, a lot of after school programs that were looking for content that fit certain parameters, and being able to provide them with a resource. And the kids were all there. It was difficult for me building the business to establish this person to person marketing, which was interesting because I worked in digital. I mean, I made YouTube videos that got many, many, many views, and it's for companies and for people and products and blah blah blah. But I really struggled with the more on the street level marketing, and it was a completely different skill set that it was very new to me, and I don't think I excelled at it then or necessarily now. So,
I mean, that is part of the challenge. It's one thing to have a really great product, and then it's another to get it into the hands and eyeballs and hearts of the people who need it, or the people who have access to be able to advocate for those who need
yeah.
it. For me, learning sales was something I reluctantly did. Early on in my entrepreneurial path, I signed on with an MLM or three, and they actually taught not only networking and business development, but they taught the interpersonal skills necessary to help people walk through a path of decision making. And now I
Mhm.
use it everywhere in my life. It's not just something I use to sell people into a product, a program, or a service. It actually is a way of thinking. And I think Jesse Elder put it best. He calls it the four gates,
Mhm.
bringing people through, where are you today? Where do you want to be that you are not yet? And then what have you already tried to bridge that gap, knowing that there's clarity now in those two things? And then how long are you willing to not have a solution that works? And if you can allow people to empower themselves through these different pillars of a sales conversation,
Yeah.
it's really empowering to have people come face to face with, their swirling and eddying, or their lack of results, even though they have tried a million things. But to bring them down the path of like being aware and then making a powerful decision to make a change through your offering if there's a match. So this sales conversation I learned about a decade ago, has helped me to formulate almost all of my conversations, whether it's a give or a sale or communicating with my children or my husband. It's like, let's be honest about where we are, where we're looking to go, and what we already tried that did or didn't work, and give us a clear assessment of what we're lacking, needing, or wanting next. And then find the right resource or outlet for that. And hey, that might be the thing that I have to give you. But that again, entrepreneurship, I always say, is not for wusses. Like, you have to confront yourself and like the different pieces of your identity that are caught up in being visible. And a lot of times, when we have stuff to offer, we have to come through the discomfort of being, kind of sort of comfortable in our normal everyday life or work. And we need to overcome that resistance so that we can affect more people, so that we can affect more change. So when it comes to having to kind of package conversations and get the word out there, what are some of the things you found that did work through your experimentation?
Well, it was finding the finding the people that, well, part of the problem in the education field is there is very little money. So it's not a place where it's always lacking in resources. And that was that and still is today a constant. I have a service that can help and benefit kids. How do I bring this to the most amount of kids, even with the problem that there's not a lot of money being put forth to help kids during in extracurricular or basically after school programs is what I center on. I do weekend programming, do summer camps, but the main gist is really providing, in those after school hours, something that's both fun and enriching at the same time. Um, what I benefited the most from was going B2B, going from myself speaking to these after school organizations that had basically had a lot of kids that needed help. They had staff, but they didn't necessarily have programming that fit all the specific needs they needed. You've got young kids in K through 2, and then you've got kids 3 through 5, which are completely different, groups. Even in 3 to 5, you get a huge jump in understanding and what works for them and what doesn't work. And on top of that, there's some programs, some schools that are looking for STEM, some that are looking for reading, writing, ELA focused subjects. So Adventure Quest basically developed different programs to fit those different categories with K through 2 STEM and reading programs and 3 through 5 STEM and writing programs.
That is super cool. I love that it is something it still hits the fun category because what I experienced in my exposure to homeschooling and kind of taking the reins of exposing my kids to things that could help them think more agilely. Yeah, I'm making up words maybe. Being more
Whatever.
agile in their thinking, and in their discovery of who they are and what they love. I found that play and curiosity and fun always is the lead target. And what are the first things that get cut from programming that has lack of funding? It's the things that provide that very environment. So I love what you're up to in putting the fun first, because as humans, we do follow that fun. I mean, yeah, in the adult world, there's a lot of things we have to do. And I have a whole other set of thoughts on all that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but knowing that when you follow the feeling of curiosity, fun, and play, that is where real learning takes place. So, I have some thoughts about like exposing, going to like homeschool conventions and things like that, because I found that a lot of the families that I met and a lot of the families that I follow even are always looking for those creative and innovative ways to put it into practice in their own homes and in their own communities. So I don't know how much of the homeschool marketplace you have touched, but I have a lot of people that I know in
That
the homeschooling space that would probably clamor for what you've got to offer. Have you given any credence or any time to going down that distribution path?
Yes, that basically that's something that I've always, had a target on. But again, just like general marketing, as I get into more schools, I'm developing program, I'm, putting out instructors and I'm training them, and then I got to go do the marketing thing, and then I got to go pursue. But I completely, the great thing about homeschooling is, yeah, they do seem to, I've talked to kids who are homeschooled, I've talked to parents that are homeschooled, and I've learned about, it should have been obvious to me, but I didn't know homeschoolers had conventions. And the fact that, I might be able to connect with, because in my experience, working with my own kids, is you need a little bit of a break from having to push, having to constantly, do this now, do this now. And what I'm offering is something where the kids are coming, can we do this now? Instead of the parents trying to make them, the kids are like, "Ooh, can we go do Adventure Quest now?" That kind of thing. And at the same time, achieve, a learning, pillar, basically, whether it's writing, whether it's math, whether it's science, they're getting that without necessarily, shining a bright light on the learning word,
Yeah, yeah.
or
We've
we're
kind
doing
of
homework word, or we're doing whatever it is. This is an adventure. This is, a story, and you're taking part in deciding where we go next.
I want to just tease out this interesting thing I just heard is we have now up in our raising of our children in the current context of learning, we have associated learning with work. We
Yes.
have associated learning with mundane tasks, the industrial age thinking of sit down, shut up, and do the thing I told you to do.
Yeah.
So kids now they're really smart, but they've associated learning with that, like, it's not full of play. And what you're kind of up to is reintroducing the fact that real learning happens when you're curious and you're drawn to something. So even for, my kids, we did it all through elementary and they re-entered the public school world in middle school and high school. So what they're learning now, they look back at that foundation of play and go, okay, this might be boring and this learning might be mundane, but I'm looking for that spark in there that
Yeah.
calls me to it. So I love that your is it K through 5? Generally speaking, that EduQuest is geared for.
And middle school.
Adventure
Yeah.
Quest, sorry,
That's okay.
Adventure Quest is geared
Yeah.
for.
Yeah, it's a K through 8, with programs. Actually, the older the kids get, a little bit easier certain things become because they're able to grapple with more. They're able to take on more. We have both a creative writing and cryptography class for middle school kids where they crack codes and learn about secret messages, and how to basically the history and then getting up to an introduction to modern cybersecurity.
Yeah, do you need a an eighth grader to be your salesman? Because I know it can.
Yeah,
Um,
that I would love it.
yeah, I think so much of what you're describing is what we wrestled with trying to create this wheel at home. So we've got more conversations to have, sir.
Sounds
But
good.
for the meantime, I'd love to, point people where they can learn more, where they can find out more, or become an advocate for what you're doing. Who's the best people to connect with you, and then how do they go about doing said connecting?
Yes, where to find me? Is that the question? Is that the adventurequest.com with an ED? And I am located currently in Brooklyn, working, doing in-person classes at schools throughout the Brooklyn and Manhattan area. And then we are launching a virtual platform, which I'm very excited about and will allow us to reach out to a lot of new students.
Awesome. So, parents, educators, homeschooling families, please go and connect with Rusty. He's up to some amazing things. And I have a couple of events that I want to share with you offline that I think might be good exposure if you're willing to kind of take a little bit of a risk. So, and by risk, I just mean, get out of your comfort zone, right? We talked about being more visible and having
Totally.
a little bit more. Elasticity in what we see as useful. So you're doing that for kids, and I'm high-fiving you and wishing you
Bam.
well, so that we can, grow and really bring this aspect of learning is play and play is fun and fun makes the world a better place for kids and adults alike. So I'm a big fan of that for adult learning. It's kind of embodied in everything that I do as the consultress. A little bit of mystery, but a lot of bit of fun. You can ask my clients, like, we laugh a lot and we get down to the root of what really matters through immersion and connection. So I love what you're doing. Please go find Rusty at adventurequest.com. And for now, I want to thank you for being here with me. Rise and Shine broadcasts every single Monday at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Click like and subscribe and don't miss another episode. Tell some friends, share this with parents and educators who really want to move the needle profoundly for that immersion learning that the world so desperately needs. We'll see you next time, friends. Same bat time and same bat channel. Have a really good one. Thanks, Rusty.
Thank you.